Right, so, hey everybody who's watching from the recording. Glad you could join, glad you could watch this and that you're interested in the summit. And so this meeting is just to talk about what the summit is and what FTC's plans for it are. We talked a little bit about just an overview of the summit, and in short, it's with the Society for Technical Communication, a professional worldwide organization that brings in professionals and students of all kinds who are interested in and studying TechCom. And we went through the STC Summit website, which showed details about it, such as that it's happening from May 15th to May 18th in Rosemont, Illinois. So this will be just a trip that we're pursuing as a club and hoping to get funding for through UCF. And in short, whether you're there to learn or to network with people or both, maybe get a new career opportunity, or just get deeper into the TechCom field, this is a great event for that. And all that being said, we're about to dive into a little bit about specific plans for FTC pursuing funding for the summit. And some of the main steps are as follows. So the first few steps, we've already gone through a few. The first step was putting out that initial ask for everyone to hear if you're interested in the summit. And well, if you're in this call or if you're watching, then you're interested in the summit. So that step's already done. And the next step is just to provide information. And that's the purpose of this meeting right here, just to give information about the summit and also what FTC's plans to help our members actually go to it are. And then after this, our next step will just be to finalize our list of students who are committed to going and who are available to go, just making that final list so that we can present that to UCF's student government and say, these are our list of members who want to go, give them a number, give them names and other information. And then at that point, they can say how much funding they'd be able to give us and whether all this is possible, capable, and so on and so forth. So that's the next main important step, just finalizing the names ahead of time. And we're definitely making an effort to do this ahead of time this time around, since in prior years, well, at least last year when the summit was online, we figured out that they do have a semi-strict deadline for funding, and we were off the mark by just 1 week, which was crazy. And that was because we pushed for it later in the semester and got around to doing things in like late March or late April, starting off the process. So this time around, we're giving ourselves a lot of extra wiggle room and hoping to finalize this list of interested members by the end of the month or even the end of this week, and then presenting our information to SGA by sometime in March, which will be well ahead of their deadline. And in specific, their deadline is they usually want information about the roster and everything to be put into a funding application 4 to 6 weeks before the event or before funding is needed. And so in our case, the event is in mid-May. So the absolute latest would be, say, mid-March to late March. But to be safe, we're doing things late February to early March. So all that being said, we're doing things early, and our next step is to get a finalized list of members. And some of our considerations that we'll be going through later are who's committed to going, who would be able to volunteer at the event, and volunteering at the event may make you eligible for reduced or even free registration costs, which will put down a big chunk of that funding that needs to be applied for. And then who's currently an STC member, and that will be just something that we ask everybody who goes, that they do end up being an STC member before registering for the event for a number of different benefits and lower registration costs, for example. And how much everything costs in total. And of course, just sending out a poll to get all this information collected in one place and make sure everything's finalized. And so that's the general overview. There's some more specific things and policies from UCF here that I'll go over once we get deeper into it. But I'll pause there for now after just saying that our main first goal was to get interest. Our main second goal now is to finalize our list of members. And then our main third goal will be to approach UCF for funding once we figure out how much we need and get those specifics from everybody. And so, yes, as Anne-Marie said in the chat, registration cost is 0 if you do volunteer. And yeah, it would be great if a good amount or even all of us are able to, depending on the size of the group and how many volunteers STC needs, that would be great. But all that being said, I want to just move back from specific details and into more discussion before we hop back in. And yeah, I was wondering if, first of all, if anybody had any questions, and if not, I have a couple that I might address on, a couple that I might start things off with. But first, does anybody have any questions or comments about the summit or our plans for funding so far?
No questions from me, at least right now. That was very informative. So thanks for the overview.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, great. And Anne-Marie said, are we trying to get an organized group? Yes.
Are you trying to have like a representation to actually put UCF tech writers out there, as well as, just trying to get the funding together?
Yes, so since we are going as a group, we will be approaching SGA just as a group, and there's a couple of members from the leadership team will just be doing so and saying that we're from the Future Technical Communicators Club, we have this group of members, and we're going to the summit for this reason. And that's how they so-called like hear our case to go. And since we are an organized group and we have partnership and history, and that partnership with STC has led us to receive a number of benefits, we do have a strong case for going. And once we're at the summit, we're sure to make a lot of connections in STC as well.
I definitely think it's a positive. Also, I would be in the engineering side of it, and I know with the engineering, we're not the greatest communicators. I mean, I know I've been a writer for a long time, but to actually have that representation from other departments is very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And more our club is getting interdisciplinary. And I remember you asking in the past just how our club is getting representation from different fields. And I feel like that's something that's happening more and more lately, and something that we can kind of pitch as something that our club does, just bring in members from all different fields to engage with TechCom. So I think if anything, it makes for a stronger point for us to go to the summit, and when we represent ourselves there as a group, just an even stronger point of what our group represents. Yeah, anybody else with comments or questions so far? All right, and I guess on that, and I was wondering if I could pass the torch to you, Aaron, if you could, if there was anything else you might want to say about the summit that I might have missed, or if you could talk about volunteering as well, since that's something that I briefly mentioned.
Sure. Thank you all for inviting me here today. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And if you think of something at the last second after this is over, it's not the last time to ask it. You can always pitch a question to either myself or to John, and he'll get it to me, and we can figure it out together. Because some things we may need to figure out also together as we go through. We get surprised each year. But the summit, as John said, it's a great place just to network in a different way with other technical communicators. STC is an organization that has a home for all technical communicators. You'll find people in a multitude of different industries and genres. You'll see people doing TechCom in lots of different ways. You'll find people who are working alongside the TechCom field, people who are teaching at TechCom, people who are vendors, and all of them have a piece of the industry. So, and they all have a desire to meet you. So that's I've been told over and over, that's one of the best benefits of our organization is its membership. It's just a great group of people who are just happy to meet folks. And the summit is a great place just to meet people one-on-one. Attending the summit is a great choice if you're able to do that. Volunteering is also a great opportunity. There is a lot of different ways that you can plug in. I'm sharing.
Oh, you muted yourself. Oh, Aaron, you're muted.
Have I been muted the whole time?
No, not the whole time.
Oh.
You stopped at
when I put in the
something
link.
you're
Okay,
sharing.
I did it when I put in the link. Okay, I was just panicking. I'm like, why just talking to myself the whole time?
Oh no.
and it's preserved forever on the recording.
Mhm.
But I just shared the link in the chat, and it's on the summit site itself under register. And that's going to just show you the different opportunities in the sign-in sheet. We're be accepting student volunteer opportunities until mid-April or so, but the earlier it's always best to put in the request, and if your plans change to say that versus the other way, trying to get in after our deadline. So because we're trying to evaluate our own volunteer needs and to try to assess what we're going to need. So the more people that we know who think they might be coming, the better. Although if you find you're not coming to the summit, please let us know so we can give up the spots for someone else. What we're looking for is everything from helping us at registration to being in education sessions, helping to be session monitors. There's counting, there's other types of tables and things where people will be needing customer service, checking badges at doors. So some of it was, was more glamorous than others, but a lot of it is just when people have come in the past and have volunteered, it's just the ability to get to meet our members on a one-on-one basis, to be, just to meet them individually and just start to build your network. It's usually just a short 4-hour shift. We try to accommodate folks in the way that we can. A lot of people take multiple shifts in different ways, in various parts of the meeting, different types of duties and skills depending on what you're interested in and sometimes where we need you. We also try to accommodate people wanting to attend certain types of sessions. So we try to facilitate that's being your goal, because you're there to also learn and attend and take advantage of everything that you can. I work the registration desk, so that's my arena. So I'll be there, and it's just greeting people when they first come up and helping them get credentialed and on their way wherever they need to go. So there's just lots of different ways to plug in, and it's a fun experience. And you also get to meet other students, other individuals like yourself who are also a part of the STC base that you'll see. You may see in education sessions, or a lot of people who make those connections. Those become part of their networks for years to come. So it's just a great opportunity to do that. It is available for student members of STC, so you would need to join STC in order to come. But the difference between even attending registration-wise, if you don't volunteer as a student versus a non-member, is astronomical. So we'd recommend doing that just for the cost savings alone. And if there's any difficulty in cost, or you're not quite sure what your decisions are, call me and we can talk through that as well. I don't want anybody to have to feel that that's the awkward piece. So do let me know if that's your personal situation in regards to registration fees if you're not able to volunteer, or if you're unsure of how you can volunteer. Another person that you might see a name, I just want to let you know, her name is Elaine Gillum. She is the conference director of STC. So you'll see her name in the midst of that. If you have questions, you can also always ask Elaine, and I'm going to drop the main summit email address if you have questions regarding you can either do it to myself or to this summit at stc.org, and either Elaine or myself will answer them regarding any questions that you might have about the event on its own. But yeah, I also want to take advantage. I know that you guys, there are some of you who are plugged into STC, but there's benefits to joining STC as a student member. There are discounts and benefits you'll get just by being an STC member, the ability to join chapters. As John brought up, we have 40, mainly in North America, but we do have members from 86 different countries. So we do consider ourselves a global organization. We, have different networking communities you can join as a part of being a student member. So that's good. And if you are currently a student, even if you're graduating, say in the spring or in the summer, it's what you're in right now. So if you're a student today and you join today, you're a student for the remainder of the year. So you can take advantage of those savings throughout the year, and hopefully in the future when you make the decision to say, then we can find the category that works best for you at that point. So just as an aside there, if anybody has any questions, please feel free. I'm not quite, let's see. I think I've given the main highlights. And there are lots of different ways you can also plug into STC, even if you're not quite sure of your membership relationship with this yet. So we encourage you to do that too. Connect to us on social media always, and just see what's going on with the organization. And hopefully we'll see you soon and see you at the summit. And I'll definitely see you at registration if we come one way or another.
Yeah, for sure. I know going to some will be a great opportunity to just meet everyone in person. And as FTC members included, because I know for a good amount of you I haven't, like some I have met, some I haven't met in person yet. So that can be it'll just be a good trip, and like on top of just a good conference, just a good trip. And as Aaron said, STC membership has an array of benefits if you're not already joined. And it really just expands upon just how deep you are into the field and into the community. And so I guess one thing I did want to ask, I know it is Kylie who's in charge of volunteering this year, but I was wondering if you had any insight, Aaron, if there's any limit on how many student volunteers may be needed, since say we have a large group of students who in FTC who want to go as a group, and we want to get volunteering opportunities for all of them. Do you know if that's something that may be feasible, or if there's ever like a cap, something like that?
Well, usually our problem is the opposite. Usually we find that we don't get as many volunteers as we need. So this year it's a little bit different, simply because we're working in the arena of COVID. So there's going to be other precautions that we're going to be taking in place, which just means we're going to be needing more, we call them breadcrumbs, but people helping just get people where they need to go. We also always have people helping with technology, people helping getting to the apps, which sometimes our student volunteers are excellent at versus some of our more seasoned professionals, just working through some of the technology. So there's going to be different opportunities that we're trying to think about of how we can get people involved. So we try not to turn down a volunteer. If we get a volunteer, so that's why my encouragement is, if you think if you know you're pretty much going to come and you're banking on coming and you want to volunteer, put your name in there. Don't wait, because it's easier for us to start knowing how many volunteers we have to work with now versus later when we're trying to accommodate folks after the deadline or closer to, because we're making our plans now just where we can fit people. So we're looking to have at least, we usually plan to have anywhere from 1.5 to 2 dozen spots just in general. That's what we think. So depending on what your group is, if you also know that you're going to bring a certain size group, you could always send a note to Kylie and just say, hey, I'm thinking about bringing, we're going to have 8 or 10 or whatever that is, and just to give her a heads up that that might be coming. That way we can kind of plan for that too. But it's nothing we would turn down. We always try to accommodate all the students that we get. So the form that I sent to you is just a one-on-one form, so that's best usually people fill it out one at a time, because it's going to ask personal questions about you and just different opportunities where you might want to fit in, so we just know where to put folks. But that's just an aside. So it's kind of we kind of try to keep it a living thing, because we don't know.
Right, perfect. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll screen share the volunteer page just to show it. And oh yeah, something about the volunteer page too. UCF members from a few years back,
yeah,
which is really cool about this. And here's Andy Romero, I think like 2017 FTC president.
2018 meeting.
Yeah, 2018, right. Just a couple years before I got in. So yeah, anyway, the student volunteer page that Aaron mentioned is right here, and it's just basic info, and it shows some of the areas and days that you may be available to volunteer, and just ask basic info.
So there's on the main page, there's one that says, there's something that says it's, what's the name of it? There's a document. If you, it's above the form. Student volunteer positions and requirements document. So that's going to give you, if you click on that, that's just a PDF that'll open. This is going to give you just more of the ins and outs on what volunteering is. It's just a way to accentuate this a little bit more. And then there'll be some numbers on the second page of kind of what we're looking for, what we're guesstimating our numbers to be. There's a grid at the bottom per shift, per type of thing. So this is kind of where we're sitting. We'll try to come, but this is not completely comprehensive.
Yeah, and that is great to know. And there's shifts available throughout the summit. And I think for FTC in specific, um, with our group and the means by which we're getting funding um, through UCF, it might be, or it really would be ideal if each of us who is in attendance does pursue volunteering, since that's a big help when it comes to, that's just a lot off of just the total cost, because that's free registration right there if you're a student and you're volunteering. And so, especially if you have a larger group, um, the student government does have a cap on how much they can give. So we want to be sure to make use of any opportunities for just lowering that total cost that we need to attend the summit as a group as possible. And that means that if, let's say we have a group of 8 going, and registration for STC student members is $250, that means that if all of us volunteer, that's $2,000 off of our backs, which is a lot. And so, as Aaron said too, the volunteering isn't anything anything really complicated, and it's really just helping out with the event, being placed in different areas where you can support the summit in different ways. And so, it's really something that's a good, well, one, a good way to get more connected to the summit and support and even get your name out there. And also just entry level tasks, simple things that help you be around the summit and help people who really need the support. And as Aaron said too, they're looking for volunteers. So NSTC is a welcoming community. So you can be just have and comfort knowing that when you volunteer, you'll be surrounded by people supporting you as well, and you'll get to just deepen your experience in the summit. And of course, free registration, which is
Always the
honestly the
bonus.
main part. So always a plus.
Well, and what we found, and then as I mentioned, as we found, I mean, we've also, I mean, your team knows each other, but maybe you haven't spent as much time physically, with each other because of COVID. But we found that a lot of times our student volunteers, they form their own little, groups as they go, so they're not alone if they're going to the summit. So it's actually also kind of nice because you kind of, make friends, which is, you just meet other people like yourself, which is great. And one thing I also just shared in the chat is our conference policies. For those who haven't taken a peek at the site, you can see all of our latest up-to-date information on COVID and what we're requiring. So you just know for your personal safety, like what we're going to be doing and the choices there. So you just make sure that you're comfortable with those types of decisions as you're making your choices, because those are also factored into our conference, which for the first time of just people's personal comfort. So we wanted to let people know, because a lot of these types of volunteer opportunities are going to be public facing. So we want to make sure you're comfortable and safe as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I do see this on the FAQ. I also wanted to ask, the summit will be in person this year. Will there be anything offered online for anyone who may not be able to physically go?
For the past 2 years, we have held a completely full event that happened online. And even though there, is different types of approaches for how we put on that conference, there's a high cost for that. So there will not be the same virtual event that we had in that capacity offered for this year. Our concentration is to do it in person. Many people have had in-person events, so hotels have gotten, very skilled at doing things safely and having their own requirements to keep everybody safe. So our plan is to do it in person in Chicago. We will have a one-day event we're planning sometime, I think in June, but it's still in the planning phase of just having like a highlights of the summit for people who weren't able to come. Maybe we'll invite back some of our top speakers, and things like that. But our goal, it's not going to be the same thing. It's going to be a highly truncated version, and just mainly if these are the highlights of the summit event that took place. So a lot of it will be, a lot of the main things will be taking place at the in-person event, such as our, we'll have of course, our education sessions, but we will also have our networking events, our expo hall. So all those will still be taking place there, and those will not be a part of those in-person those any kind of virtual component later, because we tried to implement those as well. So into our virtual programming for the past 2 years. So those will only be in person, at the in-person event. But a couple events will be staying virtual. So such as the annual business meeting, where you'll be able to hear the latest business about STC. That will be taking place actually before the summit in, I think, April, the last week of April, I believe. So that's just a good thing to just learn about how STC is governed and meet our new board and things like that. And then after the summit, we'll be doing our leadership program, which is to talk about some of our communities, our chapters, and our special interest groups, and celebrate the work that they're doing. They usually have a day-long event at the summit. That's now going to take place virtually as well, because attendance has just been better there. So just to have more inclusivity there. But the CAC will have a presence at the summit for those who maybe know who are connected to the chapters and SIGs and want to meet up with some of the community leaders. Those will have a presence there with events taking place that you'll see on the main schedule.
Okay, great. And on that note, let me hop over to the schedule tab just in case. I won't linger on it for too long, but in case anyone's interested, on the STC Summit website, there is a full schedule available. And currently, there are events on each day. On the 15th, the first day is pre-conference workshops. And then the following days are different fully fledged presentations and workshops going on throughout each day. On the 16th, the 17th, and the 18th. Lots of them, lots to choose from and lots to learn about, and representing a lot of different topics in TechCom, in related fields, and from a lot of different speakers too. And so just wanted to share that. And all right, so I'm going to be checking for questions, and I noticed that in the chat, Anne-Marie, you asked my question about air and hotel, will that be arranged as a UCF group? Yes, so that will be part of our funding plan. We're going to be hoping to fund every stage of the process, and that includes the conference registration, the travel costs, and also the lodging and hotel costs. And UCF does accommodate for each of those because they have a category of funding called CRT, which is conference registration and travel. And in short, if you apply through that and you put down the cost for each step, they are open to providing funding up to a certain amount or possibly full for registration, travel, and lodging, so long as we present them with the correct information and the total costs associated with each. So yes, as a club, UCF will be pursuing funding for each of those.
Okay, so there's nothing I have to do individually at this point in time.
At this point in time, not currently.
Okay.
And yes, and Sarah said, it seems there are only upsides to volunteering. Yep, very true.
Right. I also noticed, I was looking at the requirements. It does say you need to be vaccinated, and I assume you have to carry a vaccination card with you for attendance.
Yes, we'll be checking. We're figuring out that process with the hotel right now of how they're checking vaccination, but it's nothing that we're going to store and keep. It'll just be something that you show. If you do have any sort of a exclusion to that, we ask that you just submit that ahead of time just so we know. And if you're not vaccinated, we ask you to be vaccinated, or you can show proof of a negative test as well. So those arrangements should be there too.
Actually, what I was looking at said the negative test would not be acceptable. And
Did they change it? See, these are changing.
yeah,
Well, it's for those who are not showing, for those who cannot show, who cannot be vaccinated. So if they show proof of a negative test. So
Right.
if you are not vaccinated and either can't due to a medical need, or we ask that you do show proof of a negative test. Yeah, if you have a medical or religious exemption. And that's usually what we're asking, is a negative test.
yeah, okay. Good opportunity to have masks made that say UCF Tech Riders.
Oh, it's a great opportunity. It's sponsorships are like, woo, all of our party, the people who help us with supplies. There's tons of stuff now.
Okay.
I
Thanks.
just have to look into that.
Yeah,
like that sound of it.
T-shirts, hats, whatever. The mask is probably
sanitizers everywhere.
pretty.
Yeah.
You got to market UCF. That's one of our selling points, by the way. We're selling UCF, fund us.
Yeah. Yeah, we are looking into club shirts, slowly but surely. So maybe that's something we can wear.
Yep.
But yeah, it's definitely got to represent UCF while we're there.
No, and that's exactly what they did with the picture of the Southern, a lot of the team in 2018, because we had the meeting in Orlando. So there was a lot of UCF people there and they wore their shirts. Mhm.
Yeah.
Is there also, do we have to think about the actual hotel costs and that at this point in time? Not that I'm paying for anything at this point, but I did see the hotel costs for staying at the conference center.
Yes. So I guess now would be a good time to go into the specifics, including the specific costs and also if there
I'm
will be.
jumping the gun, let me know.
Oh no, it's totally fine. And I think it's a good time since we're running up to 4:20, so we can
Yep.
go into specifics. But yes, when it comes to the specifics about funding, we are planning to pursue funding for all steps of the process through the student government, and I'll start going through them. And in some cases, they may be able to provide full funding, but depending on the size of our group, we may also look into other ways of funding or potentially just outside ways to get funding. But ideally, we will be able to fund every stage of the process through SGA. But I'll go through this really quickly. So details about the summit, and I can share this with all of you afterward too. And after this, also look out for just additional information. I'll be sending out a poll to each of you just to get information on things like, are you able to be committed to going to the summit? And also, just are you a current STC member? A couple questions like that we'll need to just finalize how much things will cost in the end. And so the website, schedule, and the registration cost for students is $250. However, if you are a student volunteer, which ideally we'd all be able to seek, that student volunteers attend for free. So you, if eligible for student volunteering, which as we mentioned, we should be able to, since student volunteers are very welcome, you can pretty much scratch this off and not have to worry about the registration itself. And STC student membership, however, we do ask that everyone who's not a current STC student member does become one. And that's just a cost of $75 for the entire year. And as Aaron mentioned earlier, if you're a student right now, you can apply for a student membership. It applies through the year, just based on the current status you have now. And that means if you're graduating in the spring too, that's totally fine. And as an addendum to that, just pursuing funding through UCF, even if you're graduating in the spring, I double checked and you are still eligible for that. And so even if you're graduating, you're still in the game for on the things on the STC side and on the UCF side. And so it'll take place at the Hyatt Regency. And so they provide a website where we can choose to stay at the hotel of the conference itself. And it's just a few minutes away from the O'Hare International Airport. And again, it'll be where the summit is. And it gives example rates of what the rooms will cost and so on and so forth. And so that is something I do want to bring up. It may be one of the variables based on just how many people we get. Because based on how many people, we may be looking to rent either 2 or 3 rooms, since the more rooms, and especially since it's going on over a few days, the costs multiply. So we would ideally be hoping to get 2 to 3 rooms. And these are very preliminary plans. But if we do, for example, 4 people per room, or just depending on the size too, like 2 to 4 people per room, and end up getting 2 to 3 rooms, that puts us at a good spot to get a suitable amount of funding to cover most, if not all, things from the UCF side. And so that's just a bit of info there. I plan to give some more follow-up information once we're in those next steps. But on the bigger picture, here's the meat of the funding information. So as I mentioned, CRT stands for Conference Registration and Travel, and it's a means by which the UCF student government gives funding to student organizations that want to attend trips like this. And so if you put in a CRT application, or if our club, on behalf of our members and the roster who wants to go, submits a CRT application, we will be eligible for up to $2,000 allocated for the trip. And that goes towards all steps of the process. Although if we're doing student volunteering, then the registration part of the process is done. So that means it would be ideally 2,000 split between the hotel and travel, since registration will be accounted for. And so that being said, that's one of the things we're going to be tallying up once we figure out how many people want to go, because there are a couple variables involved. But also, let's say that we, for some reason, aren't able to fully get funding for everything, based on the size of the group. Say that we do eventually get 10 or maybe more people, and it makes it so that we just aren't able to fund it completely. There is an alternative too, because some would have to be paid out of pocket in that case, either by each of us pooling in or the individual putting that forward. However, the individual can confront SGA themselves as an individual and just decide to go their own route to pursue funding. And individuals who pursue funding can receive up to $200 from SGA. So you'd still be part of the FTC group going to the summit, but you'd just be filling out a separate application so that your side of things is just considered for extra funding on your end. And so again, that just takes into account, or that'll take into account how many of us are going and how much things will cost. But there is a good amount of money that is available at a maximum from ECF, whether we are all able to go as a group and things will get funded that way, or if we need additional funding, if those who do fall over that funding cap, they can apply as an individual and get some funding that way. And so there are options, and we're hoping that everything falls into place and that the 2,000 or possibly a little extra will be enough to cover the travel, the trip itself, such as flight tickets and so on and so forth, as well as just renting rooms for the duration of the conference. And again, just to reiterate, with student volunteering, that'll be registration gone, so that will help with it. All right, and with registration, they do ask that all members be registered for the conference, but that falls into us volunteering, so we can approach them knowing that that is an option. And yes, we can definitely be looking into the cost of air travel up to then. And I do hope to have a follow-up meeting, so where we can discuss things like that once we have our finalized group. And so we can just know the specifics of how much of us are going and how much we'll need. And backing up a little bit too, we do have a few minutes left and I want to leave things open for questions, but these are the 5 main steps as part of UCF's guide to pursuing funding. First, you have to be a registered student organization. We are. And then some of the leaders have to complete financial training, which we have. We've taken care of things on that end. So those are the main just administrative behind the scenes things in leadership, which we've completed. And then we have to submit a funding request form on Night Connect. And so that will be when some of the FTC leaders on behalf of the club and those who say they're committed to going to the trip, just complete a roster, fill out an application, and say how much everything will cost, and then submit that to UCF. And then after that, the last administrative things that will take place are FTC has a meeting with the UCF student government. We talk to them about our application and our reasons for attending, and how much things will cost, how much funding we're seeking for it. And then the ideal situation is that they fully approve everything. They give us the maximum amount of funding, and then we get approved, and we work with someone from SGA to register for each of the things that we need, including lodging, travel, things of that nature. And this will all be done within a certain time frame before the conference. And like we said, hopefully submitting the application by the end of this month or by early next month. And we're hoping to make sure things go smoothly on that end. And so that's the gist of it for the administrative things. And just to hop back into the next steps that we started with, the biggest step is to compile a roster of students who are committed to going, which is why right after this meeting, I plan to send out a Google form to each of you and to anyone who registered who may be on the call or isn't here right now, just to say, are you committed to going or do you have any obstructions? And are you currently an STC member? And a couple questions like that. But the main thing we're looking for is, would you be committed to going during this time? Because if you're not sure, we do ideally want to have a list of everyone who's committed to going, just so if UCF does pay us extra for someone who may not be able to go and they end up having to back out, that could cause a complication, and we may have to just deal with either paying things back or redoing the process. So we'd rather avoid that. So we ask that you let us know if you're fully able to go so we can put you on our list, or if you have any possible conflicts so that we can just discuss that and take things as they are and see if you're able to go in, or if you just want to be, for example, a backup member, which is an option. If you can fill in for someone who may not be able to go, but your availability opens up. And so it is running right around time. So that is the gist of it. And the main things are, that's the core funding process, what we're hoping to do. And our next step is compiling a roster of students who are committed to going, which is where I'll be sending out a Google form link to each of you after this meeting. But I'm hoping we can spend maybe at least a couple more minutes and open things if anybody has any questions, comments, concerns, or if anybody has any extra things that they want to say about the summit or STC in general.
I'd like to mention the one thing, also just piggyback on your statement, the thing about volunteering, where the comment was there's no negative to volunteering. And I would say the only thing, yes, there is not a lot of negatives to volunteering, but I would say the one thing is just consider your time, that you don't want to overbook yourself a lot. So the schedule is there. So go ahead and take a peek and make sure that you're having the meeting experience that you want on top of volunteering, because a lot of times, sometimes that's the one, maybe I won't say conflict we have with volunteers, but because we try to accommodate as much as we can to let people see what they want to see. But when you get on site, it's a different experience, and you know, people are going to attend things and you're on a shift, and it's one of those things. So it's kind of consider your personal time, and, you know, try not to book all hours of all the days, things like that, of just, you know, consider yourself in your own self-care a little bit, of just how you're signing up and where you're signing up, and if volunteering is right for you. I mean, of course, that's the best way to go, but be honest, if that's something, you know, what you want to do and how you want to do it, just so you're getting the meeting experience that you want, because we all want to make sure we're all having a good time.
Question about that. What would you say is like the average, I guess, that people would volunteer for? Is that like a shift a day, or maybe a couple shifts one day?
I've seen people do a couple shifts in a day. I've seen people do like a shift each day. I've seen, you know, it really depends. That's kind of, it's what we kind of need. And it all kind of pans out to how many volunteers we have, who's, you know, who's doing what, who wants to do what. And so that it all kind of is when I was bringing up the living thing, that's kind of what it is we look at the opportunities, then we try to find where we need folks. I would say, look at the schedule, you know, and say what times you're available, and then we'll put together that schedule from there. And we have conversations about those things. And Kylie's great. And she's working with the conference coordinator, who's been the volunteer coordinator, for years. So it's a machine. So once we figure it out, it'll be fine. And then once you're there and work a couple shifts, if you're having similar shifts, you'll know what you're doing. So it'll be even there. So I would say, look at the schedule, kind of evaluate what you're doing. Because like for me, registration, it's early. We're there early, you know, 7 a.m. We're ready to go. So, you know, consider yourself, your own self-care, what your own meeting experience is going to be. And also make sure you're attending like the networking events, the honors reception and things like that. Add those to your calendar. Make sure because those are sometimes the best informal ways to talk to people outside of just the sessions itself. You know, it's fun to go to sessions, but also consider the other stuff too. It's just the fun stuff. Yes, we will have monitors in the meetings and sessions. We have session monitors for every group. So we have people counting people in the rooms and things like that. So yes, those will be opportunities. That was a note in the chat.
So I guess that if you wanted to go to a session, you could actually probably volunteer for that session.
You might be potentially do that. I would say we can try to make that happen, or like if you're working registration, sometimes I'll say, okay, you want to go to the session, go, and then come back. So we try to be flexible as much as we can to get people into the events they want to go to. And I would say the schedule there, go ahead and take a peek and look at that, just to make sure you get the things that you want to do done.
I didn't see it on the conference schedule, but is there like a get together in the evenings, like a social?
We will be having more social events planned. Those usually happen a little bit closer to the event because we work with the local chapter Chicago, and they're helping put together events and putting together a list of restaurants and things like that. So
Okay.
those social events will be coming. But yeah, most of the time outside of the meeting program, there are sometimes smaller social events. But COVID has changed things a little bit, so we'll see what those pan out to be. But yeah, those have been, typically there's been stuff to do after hours as well. And you're in Chicago. It's a great city. It's a suburb. We're in Rosemont, so we're in suburbs, so not too far. We're on the L, I guess, is their subway system. I've heard it's not too bad to get in. As an aside.
It won't be as cold.
No. Well, I don't know. Last two meetings we had in Denver were both happening in late May, early June, and it snowed both times I've been there.
Last
But it's
time I
Denver.
was up there and I did get into that hotel, I actually almost missed my flight coming home. I got lost on the highway.
Oh God. Well, hopefully you well, the good thing is Chicago is the main hub. So then this hotel is really close to the airport. So
That's a good thing.
yeah,
Don't need a ground transportation.
not too bad. Yes, I guess that would be my one piece of advice if you're looking for volunteering, is just to look at the schedule and really know, because sometimes things may change, so keep an eye on it on the schedule, because things may need to switch up. But
now I'm just looking at the pre-conference schedule again. A lot of this isn't going to apply to me. I don't know if it applies to anyone in the group if they're planning to do the practitioner level exam, if they're actually able to do it. But there are quite a few half-day conferences out there as well.
yeah, those are additional add-ons that happen the day before the meeting, which have an additional fee attached to them. Usually a half-day or full-day trainings on specific things. One of them is the CPTC practitioner, which you would need to have passed foundation first in order to take.
Yeah, well, that will be one of my questions on the side.
Just as an aside, if people are looking at that, this is the first year we're offering practitioner at the summit, where we usually always held just foundation.
Right.
It's good to have an in-person event for those who are CPT certified. It's like in a classroom environment, which is nice.
Right, so anybody else with questions about the summit or STC? Okay, so the next step after this, since, as I mentioned, I'll be trying to tally up the committed members or the committed attendees and be just available to answer any questions between now and ideally late Friday or early Saturday, just so it doesn't run too late into the month where we will need to have the roster finalized. So after this, look out for an email from me. I'll be putting in the document of the steps FTC is taking that I've been screen sharing. I'll put that in there. I'll put the brief poll in there also, just where you can designate things such as your availability and commitment to attending the summit, things like that. And that'll be brief. And also I hope to have a follow-up meeting sometime after that information is in. Possibly sometime next week or the week after, just so we can follow up and maybe gather anyone who isn't here for this meeting into that as well. So those will be the main things. Look out for follow-up email with the document and the poll, and also just a follow-up meeting in the next couple of weeks. But besides that, it is a bit past our time. So anybody have any final things before we close out for today? All right, so we went over a lot of great things today. So well, first off, thank you all for coming through, and feel free to reach out to me for anything if you have any questions in between, or to Erin too, just reach out to her directly if you have any questions on things STC related or summit related. And as she said, she'll be happy to help out with that. And so just be sure to just use both of us as a resource or the STC Summit website, and to just look out for correspondence leading up to that, such as the information I'll be sending you soon. And yeah, hopefully looking forward to, yes, as Anne-Marie said, there is the meeting on Friday just for FTC and STC Florida. There's going to be a panel of speakers there, so be sure to join for that. We're celebrating 20 years of FTC history, so you'll definitely want to join for that. But all that aside, looking forward to talking with you next time, and thank you all for coming by.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Hi.